Welcome, folks. Welcome to Winning on Wednesday. My name is Juan Vitas. I'm the co-founder of Winning on Wednesday. Winning on Wednesday is a platform that meets every Wednesday at 11 o'clock Eastern Standard Time. And the purpose we're there is to build meaningful professional relationships. As I often say, people do business who they know, like, and trust. And today I have the pleasure of introducing my friend and also a podcast host. His name is Jeffrey Lackey. How you doing, Jeff?
Nice to see you, Juan, and
Uh,
really glad to be on your show. Thank you very much for having me today.
Eh, Thank you. And now it's your turn. Before it was my turn, now it's your turn. So I'm excited about this. So so tell us a little bit about yourself.
So my name is Jeff Lackey. I'm CEO of JKL Advisors. I'm also the host of Growing Your Business with People, a podcast that's dedicated to CEOs and other business leaders who are looking to grow their business with the biggest and most important investment that they have, which is people. So I'm very excited, to be able to join you, and I'm very passionate about being able to allow leaders to I think we call it lift while you climb.
Ex
Mhm.
exactly. So tell us where we all got started. Where did it all begin? Where were you born? And tell us where your whole history. Where did it all begin?
Oh my, yeah. So we do have 4 hours for this, right? You know,
Uh,
the
yeah, something like that.
maybe not, maybe not. So my background is very simple. I started out. Most people can tell that I was born in the Philippines right immediately when they meet me. Yeah,
Wow. I was shocked when I first heard that, by the way, folks. I was shocked. I don't think he was joking, but he's serious. The guy's serious.
I am serious. I was born in Manila. My dad was in the Air Force. My mom was actually in the Air Force, but not at that time. So I was
So
unusual for the sense that I had two Air Force parents. Yeah.
thank you for your service. Thank you for your family, and thank you. I'm always grateful for the service of service people, family as well.
They did a lot, and I'm grateful to them for many things. But as I grew up mostly in Ohio, so we moved quickly. And by the time I was two, I was living in Ohio, so I don't remember a ton about the Philippines. And then I grew up in a small, very rural section, and went to school, and then went to the Ohio State University, where I studied the language Swahili. Was my language of choice. So people may say, why Swahili? And I said, because I was terrible at languages. And I was sitting there with Robert Smith, who is a running back for Ohio State, now works for ESPN as an announcer, and another individual, which was the baseball player. And they were sitting there talking Swahili back and forth. They're going, Hujambo, Sijambo, Habariza Subuhi, ah, heavey, heavey. And I'm like, what are you guys talking about? Robert kind of looks at me just kind of sideways, and the baseball player goes, dude, it's Swahili. It's the language for jocks.
Oh gosh.
And I said, and I looked at him and I said, I just was like, thank you, thank you,
Wow.
thank you, thank you. And actually, it was so impactful. I enjoyed it so much that I actually got my brother-in-law to take Swahili. And now my daughter is fluent in a level at a level she's actually has a fluency that she could be an interpreter, a Swahili interpreter
Oh
now. So
man. Wow. Wow, that's really
so
amazing. So
you might not know that whenever you first meet me, but within 5 minutes I'll share that stuff with you.
oh wow. Yeah. No, I could have just told by looking by you. No, I'm just kidding.
That's right.
Sure, sure. So tell us what you
You
were
can't judge a book by the cover, right?
but yeah, exactly. So tell us when you were little, what did you have any inspirations of being, or did you have any professions, like an idea? Because we all change, when we were little, we want to be this and, like a baseball player, and you know what I mean, or anything like that. So what was your aspirations being when you were like, what are your ideas?
So I got to put it in frame and of context a little bit. So when I was 7 years old, when I was a little kid, I had it a little different. So I said my dad was in the Air Force. He'd retired from the Air Force, gotten out. Unfortunately, he dealt with some mental illness. He was actually bipolar, and that's in the 1970s. People didn't understand bipolar disorder. So that was a big struggle for him trying to figure out his medication, stay on the medication, and it was very disruptive for our family. It wasn't because my dad was a bad man, he was a very good man, but at the same time he dealt with a very debilitating disease. My mom was in the 70s trying to figure this out. We're in the rural area, kind of not surrounded by much. My grandparents lived next door, but they spoke Polish. And it was a very, very difficult time because whenever you're that, and it also made us quite, limited financially. In seventh grade, I only had one pair of pants and they didn't fit.
Wow.
Right.
Wow.
I, so, so I felt ostracized like by other kids because they didn't really understand what I was going through. Unfortunately, in second grade, I also got a case of lice, which is terrible, right? But unfortunately, I didn't know that other people didn't like lice or didn't. So I told everybody I had lice, because I was an oversharer. Well, that as if having a dysfunctional family wasn't enough, then all of a sudden I was the kid with lice on top of it. And so if the ostracizing couldn't have been any worse, like it just got worse by a factor of 10x. Like I had one friend and one or two friends. So I'm going through all this. I'm going through this, like I feel very isolated, very alone. But the one thing I do remember, that a couple things. One is that I always wanted to be a doctor. I always wanted to be an MD. And I think it's partially because one of my older brothers is a chief of the paramedics and was in the medical profession. I like that. And then the second is I always wanted to be a leader. And the reason I wanted to actually be a leader is because I didn't want anybody else to feel like I was feeling. And I wanted somebody to I wanted to be the person who was willing to care for somebody who actually felt like they were ostracized, like they were marginalized, they knew they were of value, but nobody else seemed like that they cared. And I wanted to be the person who actually cared. And as a leader, because I knew that there was a lot in there that I could serve through my understanding and empathy. I could serve. So at 7, 8, 9 years old of age, I had it firmly in my head that I wanted to be a leader.
Wow. Wow. And thanks for sharing that. And did you have any role models or anybody that inspired you?
Funny enough, my dad, right? The one who's going through all this, right? And also my mom. So my mom stayed with my dad through it all, which God bless her. Like she had to go through a lot, right? But my dad also pulled himself up from his bootstraps of sorts. He was in an orphanage at the age of 13. So he lost both his mom and his dad by 13 and got thrown into an orphanage with his other brothers and sisters in an orphanage that was not very nice. Let's just put it that way.
Wow.
And he ended up going to the Air Force and rising all the way up to the second highest non-commissioned officer rank in the Air Force, a senior master sergeant, and actually had received the promotion to the chief master sergeant in the Air Force, but turned it down because he didn't want to go back to Vietnam and leave his family again. So so somebody coming from that environment in the deep South, right, in a little place in South Carolina, breaking away from all of that stuff and being able to make it in the military and take it to a place where they were, where they could raise a family
They,
and
uh,
show people love and caring in a way that's very unusual.
wow. Just that's amazing. It's just an amazing story. Especially, and again, thank you again for your service, for your father, to do that, to sacrifice, and again, is to protect our freedoms, and we all take it for granted. Obviously, you and I have the ability to talk and create and do this. It's just because of all the sacrifices of your family did.
Yeah.
So I just once again, I just want to generally thank you so much for this, and it's really a lot. And did you have any interests or hobbies when you were growing up? I mean,
Um, I have a lot of fascinating hobbies. We won't talk about all of them, but
uh,
I'll share the fact that I was growing up. Even I was in Boy Scouts, so I spent a lot of time. I got all the way up to Star Boy Scouts, and did a ton of. I did Klondike. I actually sat out in the Klondike when we hit 50 below zero, 85 below wind chill in a canvas tent one year. So
wow.
that's some serious dedication. We only did one night, not two, because it was so cold. But did soccer, baseball. They didn't let me play football of all things. My kids play football, but my parents were afraid because my brothers got hurt during football. But then I did Taekwondo, and I found a passion in that. I did that in golf. I'm still no good at golf, but I was on the golf team. But separate, I was actually pretty good at Taekwondo, so much so that I did not compete in, but I trained for the Olympics. So I really
Wow.
enjoyed that. But as I was telling you, at some point you realize the difference between perspiration and talent. And I had lots of perspiration, and I had a small amount of talent, but not the level of talent that some of the people just naturally had that were just ridiculously amazing. And I was always very, I was inspired by them, but knew that I wouldn't be achieving quite their levels in the time frame that I had. So I actually later on, funny enough, funny story, along the line, I go out, I raise my family. One of the stops along the way is Minnesota. I take my son to a Taekwondo studio, and he's about 7 or 8 years old. I still remember he got his Taekwondo uniform, and we have a video of it. He gets it, he opens up and he holds up above his head. He goes, "Thank you, Santa." Yeah,
Aw.
like that was the best. So we take him to the studio, and I meet with the head of the studio, and lo and behold, that same Olympics I was trying for, he actually received the silver medal
Oh,
in it.
wow.
It was before it became an official sport. It was
Yeah.
still it was the Olympics before it became an official sport. So
You
it
know,
was a lot of fun.
yeah, it's interesting. My kids took Taekwondo for a couple of years. And when they were little, they were
Right.
little, they took Taekwondo. It was fun. Cookie Taekwondo and all that. That
Cookie.
was cookie. See,
Mhm.
I know, but it
What
was
does
really
cookie
nice.
mean? What does cookie mean?
You
It
know,
means conquer yourself.
conquer yourself. There you
Conquer
go.
yourself.
Yeah, yeah.
I was teaching at the age of 14. I would teach adults. I
Hmm.
was having adults actually have to call me sir and would bow to me because I was the
Oh,
more
wow.
senior belt. I would have 50-year-old people, and I was the instructor of the class, and it was surreal, I'm sure for them, but it was a good development for me to learn how to lead.
Anyasa nyo. That's all I know. It's coming back. It's coming back. It's coming back. But anyway, but it was hey, listen, I'm like you too. I like languages. I've learned languages, so I've learned, and I mean the Swahili, I'll give you credit for that. I'm learning I don't know if I told you Swedish right now. Swedish.
Swedish,
Yeah, I
yeah.
have a couple of Swedish friends, but all the bad words, of course, The only good
Those are the first.
the only one I know, the good, the new, the only one I know is Bluma, which means flower. So we call us guys, yeah, we just call each other guys flower. So
Flower.
yeah, I
So
can't make it.
here's a weird situation. So my grandparents were Polish, right? I
Mhm.
go, we periodically visit like home for the elderly, and we go visit them, and sometimes we talk to them, sometimes we sing, just do stuff just to make them like, especially on the holidays when sometimes there's not family or what have you, try to help. I see this one lady who is almost catatonic. She's sitting in a chair. And I make sure I see every single person. I greet them, I talk to them for just a moment, if they can. And even if they can't respond, I assume that they maybe be able to hear me, so I still talk to them. This lady's not moving, not doing anything. I go right to her. Now, I've not mentioned anything about my heritage, my background, or anything. She looks at me and says, "Dziękuję," which is thank you in Polish. And I was like, this lady has not moved a muscle, not said a word, not done anything. And all of a sudden, as soon as I go to greet her, she just says, "Dziękuję, thank
Yeah.
you."
Wow.
And I'm like, how did she know? I'm
Eh,
like, I don't know. I do not know. Yeah.
wow, that's pretty amazing. Yeah.
Yeah.
So tell us, what did you go to school for?
So I went to school at the Ohio State University
Okay.
for industrial organizational psychology. So I started out in pre med, and organic chemistry took me out. Organic chem was the death of me, and I realized actually my place was more in what I call the psychology of business, the business psychology. and I really like the predictive nature of testing and what have you. So actually, Dr. Klamoski, who is the president of the Society of Industrial Organizational Psychologists, was also the head of the department at the time. And my wife worked as a student helper in his office. So she goes, well, you're thinking about psych as a switch from pre-med. Why don't you talk to Dr. Klamoski? Not having any, I walk in his office and it's like a flat. I mean, it's not an office. It's almost a flat. And he pulls me in and we talk for like 2-3 hours. He basically recruits me into the idea of the concept of industrial psychology. And after that, I just found a passion. I went there. And then after I got my undergraduate, I went off to Akron to try, thinking I might want to be a PhD in that. That wasn't really the right angle. Went off to Kent, started an MBA. Had to move to Indiana to take a job, so switched over, went to IU to try and finish up and try and transfer as much as I could. Then went and left IU to go to Corning, and so I have 7 years of postgraduate education and no graduate degree to show for it. Yeah,
Wow,
so
wow.
very overeducated and underdegreed. How about that?
There you go. There you go. Wow. Truly amazing. And what was your first job? What was your first experience or your real job like after all this education study after all the experience that you've had? What was your first?
Yeah, so my first job while I'm in grad school was selling jeans at Kaufman's, but we won't talk about that. Listen, I had to augment my salary by helping enroll people in credit cards so that I can get that extra $4 for every person, so I could pay my bills. So, but the first professional job was as an executive recruiter. So I got called. I was actually visiting Boston of all places with my wife. We needed to get away, so we went to Boston for a quick getaway. Drove our Chevy Impala with 285,000 miles and bold tires on it, all the way to Boston and back from Ohio, right? And we and while we're there, we get a call from my sister-in-law, and there's this executive recruiting firm, and Eric, a friend of mine still to this day, says to me, he goes, he called, I didn't know him at the time. He goes, hey, have you ever considered being a recruiter? And I was like, in my mind, I was like, wah, wah, wah. I thought you actually had a real job for me, not to be a recruiter, right? And then he said, well, actually, it's a little different. This is an executive recruiter, and we're a retained executive search firm. So this is actually kind of a big deal. We're a boutique firm. I said, okay, talk to me about it. So we talked. I said, yeah. I said, that sounds actually maybe interesting. So I interviewed, got hired, and started working in executive recruiting. And actually, that's really what helped launch my career into so many different places in the talent and because I actually learned from leaders about what it meant to be a successful leader, but also what it meant to be an unsuccessful, what created unsuccessful leaders. So it was kind of like getting my MBA through my work by interviewing leaders all day long, every day. So really, it was probably one of my best career moves I've ever made, was that first one. Yeah.
And what made you go on your own? Like from going from there, to what you're doing now?
So, I mean, I spent 28 years in corporate
Yeah.
building talent capabilities from anywhere from $100 million companies all the way to
Yeah.
Fortune 4, $320 billion organizations. We
Yeah.
grew CVS from Fortune 12 to Fortune 4 in 8 years.
Hey, you
So
tell us about the CVS. CVS,
yeah, that's CVS Health. Yeah. So I
what
was
was
in
it?
charge.
What was your title?
So I was the vice president of talent acquisition. So I was in charge of all of hiring for the whole enterprise. My
Wow.
team did the whole thing.
National, right? The
Oh,
whole
global.
global. Wow,
Global. Yeah,
globally. Wow.
we had it in many countries because of Aetna and other portions of our business. So yeah, I have teams in all parts, all areas of the world. So and I did that at Rolls-Royce as well as the head of
Rolls-Royce, yeah.
talent, head of resourcing, which is talent acquisition for all of Rolls-Royce as well. So
And how many years were you in Rolls-Royce?
about 8 years.
Oh, just a share. Wow. So
yeah,
you got to see the world.
Yeah, I visited over 50 countries. I was responsible for hiring in over 70. So essentially, if you boil it down, I've I've had the pleasure of leading teams that have been in that served over 70 countries, hired over 1 million people across 8 different industries. So
Wow.
so
And
this is the poor farm kid from Ohio that didn't have that only had one pair of jeans to his name, and was struggling with struggling with being ostracized, whenever, and this is the same person. I'm like you can't even write a story like this. I mean,
wow,
the
yeah.
the amount of blessings that I've received over my life are very much indescribable.
And it's truly amazing that you were able to sell high-end luxury cars, right?
So this wasn't
Automobiles, right?
so not even so here's the dirty little secret. Rolls-Royce doesn't sell cars anymore.
The engines.
So the Rolls-Royce automobile is owned by BMW. That was sold because the Queen bailed out Rolls-Royce in the 80s and basically said, you either got to choose the automobile or aerospace, and they chose automobile or the aerospace to keep. So they sold off the automobile. They sold Bentley to VW and Rolls-Royce to BMW. So what is left of the brand, for actual purposes, is aircraft engines, both defense and commercial,
Commercial.
commercial and defense air, naval systems, naval engines, power plants. And at the time there was also power for cities, power generation for cities, and other situations, including even at one point in time we did wind turbine engines as well.
Wow, fascinating. That's fascinating. Do you still, out of curiosity, do you still keep in touch with any of your colleagues? I mean, it's a big
All,
company. It's a big
all.
company, all of them.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
So one of the guys, that has been, several have been on my podcast, Mark Judd, who's former PwC, also worked at Workday, was leading product for all of Europe. He was on there. Toby Barnes, who worked at Google, for a while, worked at a bunch of big names, and he's been on the podcast. But yeah, Simon Smith, who's not been on the podcast, but is somebody I worked with. He's now the chief people officer at Aston Martin.
Oh, wow.
You
Wow.
got people like literally
Yeah.
all
Isn't it?
spread out.
Isn't that
Mhm.
amazing? You see when all these people you used to work with and now they're moved on and some even bigger things and better things. And I'm always happy for the people that that you were colleagues at one point used to work with that they can say, hey, I used to work with that guy. You know what I mean?
It's an amazing, your network is, that's my parents always said, do not burn bridges. If you burn a bridge, you understand that the consequences of it will be much bigger and longer than you believe. So if you're going to burn a bridge, do it intentionally and do it only for the highest of high purposes, because you must do it. But all else, try to make sure you maintain and cultivate relationships. That was a big deal for both my dad and my mom.
Wow, wow. And so I guess that made you go into what you're doing now. And I mean, and so you went your last corporate was with CVS, right? Yeah,
CVS.
CVS,
Yeah.
and then you
Mhm.
decided to go. How was that journey though? Were you nervous? Were you confident? I mean, you were confident already. You knew all these people, and plus you said your network is what was your safety net in a sense, right?
I'd be a fool to say that I had 100% confidence, because right, that no entrepreneur does,
Right,
right?
right, right.
But I felt confident that, you know so it's an interesting thing. I actually felt led that this is the right thing to do. Like I spent some time praying about it and seeking guidance from God to say, hey, what is it that you really want me to do? And I just kept on saying, hey, will you just shut the doors that you don't want me to go through and open up the doors that you do want me to go through? And it was clear, like every door that would have normally opened up for another internal, kept on being like, yeah, that's not gonna. But all the consulting doors like flung wide open, like literally within minutes of me making my decision. I literally was getting calls from people going, hey, have you set up your LLC yet? If you have, as soon, like, we'll hire you now, but just
Yeah.
promise that you'll have it for our paperwork pretty soon, right? And
Wow. Well,
So it was big.
that's truly amazing because I mean, I guess of all the work you've done, you brought all that value that people want to do business with. And I always say people do business with they know, like, and trust. And the fact you built that rapport for many years of being with all these companies, they knew you, they like you, they trust you, and I'm so it's part of the process. Absolutely, wow.
Well, I've actually used your phrase "know, like, and trust" recently with somebody, and I want to tell you that because it's an absolute truth. Because
Yeah.
they like you. I like to develop rapport, so I get to
Right.
know the person and they get to know me, and I'm fairly transparent that way. People find that they'll say, "Oh, he loves his dad jokes," he loves it. Like, you I enjoy talking with them, love to go out. Okay, so they like me. They know me because I'm networked, right? But they trust me. There's two things in trust there. There's one is they trust me from an integrity perspective because I protect my integrity in what I do. Like there is almost no more precious thing that I own than my own integrity. If I don't have my integrity, I really don't have anything left of my reputation. And I protect that to my dying breath. The second is they trust my competence. And that's the other thing is it's actually part of the integrity to say that, like, I'm not going to oversell you on what I can't do, but I will share with you the things that are within my capability and my experience and my talent to be able to provide for you. And I work hard, to do that. you know, I don't shy away from hard work whenever it comes to my clients or my teams. Yeah.
That's great. No, that's great advice. And speaking of advice, it's the golden nugget time. I like to call this where, if you'd like to leave any valuable information behind for people to become a better business person or help their business out, is there any information you'd like to share or leave some examples?
Perfect. So I would say this. It's the one thing that I continue to learn every day, and I try to get better at it every day. There's a Hebrew word called lev shomeh. And if I mispronounce it, one of your guests can please let me know. But it's a Hebrew word that refers to a listening heart. Technically, in the book of, in the Bible, it talks about Solomon, and they talk about Solomon being given. Everybody says he's given wisdom, but actually, if you look closely at the translation, it wasn't wisdom. God gave him a listening heart. He asked for a listening heart. He was also given wisdom and other things along the way, wealth beyond imagine and power and all these other things. But he started out by asking for a listening heart. And as leaders, that's probably one of the most powerful things that we could possibly have. And when you say listening heart, that doesn't mean that I just hear you. It means I'm internalizing you. I'm absorbing you. I'm almost eating your words. Like that, I'm devouring what you have to say because I really can't get enough. But I also am sure to make sure that you know that I'm listening. I want you to understand that you are not, that I care so much about what you're saying that I'm listening and hanging on every word that you're saying. And that type of a listening heart leads to wisdom beyond measure. And wisdom is the thing, like knowing things that nobody else knows is the thing that helps a leader differentiate themselves, but it also creates followership. Do you think people follow somebody that doesn't listen to them? All right. What will they
Yeah.
do if they really feel
I,
listened to?
Yeah, you're right. I always say you always have put yourself in their shoes, It's like always have that
Yeah.
empathy, always
Empathy.
empathy. Absolutely. Always put yourself in their shoes and how it is because sometimes when you start thinking or thinking about different position, things are a little bit more differently, a little bit sometimes more clearly sometimes or even when you sleep on it the next day, sometimes it's better the next day that you feel it, So it's a whole different empathy and it's a different way of looking things. And part of that, it takes listening. You have to listen. You're absolutely right. You have to be a master of listening, and that takes a certain skill set, as absolutely to listening and understanding. When I
Right.
network, I listen to people. I'm always
Right.
connected. I'm always say, how can I connect them? I'm always like, how can I connect them?
Yeah.
Because at the same time, I'm trying to think. value. Because if I'm able to connect you with somebody that will be able to make that spark, and
Right.
it's an idea, and I've done that plenty of times. It's just, and that person is always grateful. They always come back. They always say, "Oh, thank you
Mhm.
for introducing me to this person. Thank you for taking the time to listening for me." That's
You're
the one.
listening.
Thank you
Mhm.
the time for listening to me
Thank you
and
for the
making
time
that
listening to me.
making that wonderful introduction. You know how many times I've heard of that?
Wow. Millions, millions.
Yep,
Yeah.
yep.
Thank
And
you
it's
for the time of making that wonderful introduction. Can you, but, but without you listening, that introduction may have never been made.
cor-
And
correct.
imagine the waterfall effect that would have never happened as a
Uh,
result of that amazing introduction. Yeah.
and you want to make here's something funny. Sometimes I feel like the old school telephone operators, you know,
Mhm.
with the plug in. Hold on a second. I had to do this morning. I was like, I'm making an introduction over the phone, like a three-way phone call. And I was like,
Mhm.
hey, hold on a second. I'm gonna make a call. And I just felt like I just envisioned those operators just making those connections. Hold on one second. Hold on one second. That's that's how I feel
That's what we
sometimes.
do. That's
Yeah, but
and that's something that that's something of the human experience that is very unique to people and cannot be replicated in AI.
oh yes.
It's that
Well,
connection.
and also it's the experience as well. The
Yeah.
experience you cannot
Yeah.
replicate experience. From AI, because the experience is what we have and what you do have, and also, and that's also yeah. So with AI, you can't experience, you can't replicate experience.
No, you're an ultimate connector. I remember when we first got connected via LinkedIn, I was like, well, yeah, this guy, this sounds exciting being able to get to know
Oh
Juan.
yeah.
He's amazing and such a unique background with your, with your politics and your business and your marketing and like and your background, where you came from, all the way to
Uh,
where you are today. I'm like,
uh,
this, I love fascinating people, and
I,
you're just
I,
another
I,
fascinating person. That's
Hey,
awesome.
Jeff, you make a wonderful guest because every time we talk, we go right next to the next topic, and you're like, you spot on, you like segue to the next topic. So yeah, I love it. I love this. I wish all my guests could be like you. So we're talking about networking. What networking groups do you belong to, or any other spheres of influences do you belong to, organizations do that you want to mention too?
Yeah. Yeah. So I make sure that there's a few things that I'm a part of that I've always been a part of. Obviously, within HR, the Society Human Resource Management is a big one. Career Crossroads with Jerry Crispin and Chris Voigt are big ones. I've been a part of the talent exchanges and stuff with Craig Fisher and so many. I've been parts of the conference board, so big into the conference board. I've been worked with Gartner and many of their organizations. I go where I can be with other thought leaders where I can learn from them, and that if they see that there's a value in something that I have, that I can share that with them. But for the most part, I go to learn and to absorb and to get better, because as leaders, that's the one infinite. You can never be the perfect leader. There is no perfection standard.
Right.
So there is an infinite amount of growth and learning that you can have as a leader. There's no limit, no upward limit. If anybody says, what's your biggest weakness? I always say leadership. And they're like, well, you're doing some pretty good jobs as a leader to have that as your biggest weakness. I say, it's the one that I'm furthest away from the top, because there's an infinite ceiling and I just have so much further to go before I can really appreciate what it takes
Well,
to be a most awesome leader. Yeah.
well, we know you're a leader of your own company. Speaking of your companies, tell us a little bit more about your company.
So JKL Advisors LLC is a HR talent acquisition consulting company. We work with clients from health systems to retailers to all sorts of organizations to help them grow their business with people, which happens to be the name of my podcast, Growing Your Business with People. And I talked a little bit about the fact that I have CEOs. I have the former head of the recruiting for the CIA. I had the former CEO, or actually current CEO of Hyatt Hotels, former president of a $180 billion line of business at CVS. I've had the CEO of ATI Physical Therapy. I've had tech individuals who will be season 4. Will be some technologists who've worked in some of the largest organizations known to man. I've had the honor and privilege to be able to interview guests just like you, Juan, who's going to be a guest on my show.
Yeah, yep.
Folks caliber like you that are able to come on my
Yep.
show and be able to share nuggets. And this is where I call it my mission field. Like, if I can make leaders, give them information from folks like yourself and these other people that will help them be just a little bit better of a leader, and they can make maybe 10 people's lives just a little bit better, then I feel like the multiplier effect as I broaden out my network will just get, people's lives, the hope and the capability will just increase over time. And it's just, that's what I'm looking to help build better leaders, and giving access to the mid-market, which are some capabilities that only the Fortune 5 or Fortune 10 have access to right now, but bringing that knowledge and insight all the way into small and medium-sized businesses so that they can say, oh, you know something, that's a great idea. I also have a strange following of high school students and college kids, even a small percentage, who are aspiring business leaders who are listening to my podcast and who listen to it like religiously. So I have anywhere from CEOs of Fortune 100 companies all the way to high school students as my listening audience.
That's amazing. That's amazing. And it's always nice to give back. Again, we only live one life, and it's nice to give back and leave a legacy behind of helping others. That's amazing. And you have, Jeff, thank you so much for sharing your story with us. It's been really a true honor, and it's really great. Thank you for taking the opportunity. And if you like to, what's the best way to reach you, by the way? What's the best way if people want to get in contact you? What's the best way to contact you?
The way I say is go to my website, www.growingyourbusinesswithpeople, or GYBWP.com. Both of those work. You can also go on LinkedIn, find me, and send me a message, and go to my company page, Growing Your Business with People. If you want to email me, you can send me an email to jeff@jkladvisors.ai. And happy to take take an email, or if you want to listen to my podcast, if you want to investigate my consulting services, or you just want to chat. Like I mentor, I think, somewhere in the neighborhood of 18 to 20 people right now. That I tried to work with and tried to develop anywhere from the CHRO level all the way to high school and college level individuals that are in early professionals. So I'd like to try, to your point. I didn't really have a lot of, outside my family, I didn't have a lot of mentoring whenever I was younger. And I'd really like to, I want to be that thing that I didn't have when I was growing up.
Wow. Excellent. Well, thank you so much again for sharing your story.
And
if you'd like to become a member of Winning on Wednesday, please simply go to winningonwednesday.com and sign up as a first-time guest. And thank you. And we hope to see you next time. So thank you. Thank you, Jeff. Thank you.
Thank you, Juan.